What is up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Jericholic8704, here to give you another installment. Another installment of Raw's Jericholic8704. Isn't it your lucky day? It's my lucky day. So let's dive in to Raw, May 24th, 2004, from Rockford, Illinois. So we started with a recap of the Battle Royal from last week. It was actually funny with this recap because once it showed Shawn Michaels eliminating Triple H, they cut to Kane like getting his hand raised and Kane being all happy and celebrating because he got a world title shot. And it's funny because last week on Raw you really didn't see that at all. You just saw Shawn Michaels and Triple H have their little back and forth where they were talking to each other and the camera cuts to them. They never even showed Kane. So I guess within this week they realized, like, oh shit, like this is our number one contender for our world title. Maybe we should show him actually celebrating his victory because he's actually an important part of the next pay-per-view. Just a thought. So anyway, our first backstage segment was Triple H taping up his wrists. He's complaining to Bischoff. He's saying, you need to reinstate Shawn Michaels, the whole spiel. Eric Bischoff says, I'm way ahead of you. Shawn Michaels has been reinstated, and it's going to be Triple H and Shawn Michaels at Bad Blood. Triple H says the second HBK walks in, he's going to beat him half to death, and then he's going to drag him out to the ring and beat him up in front of everyone and basically kill him in front of the world. Triple H basically posed a death threat here, so apparently he's not arrested for that. Once Bischoff leaves, Triple H turns to Evolution and he yells at them. He says there better be unity tonight in Evolution. And then he tells Ric Flair to go to the ring because he has a match with Edge and Randy Orton should go with him. Before Orton leaves, this is a great moment. Orton says, you know what, when you see Shawn Michaels, I hope you beat his ass. And then Triple H calls back Batista and says, Batista, you should stay with me. Which I did enjoy just because even though Triple H it was the reign of terror, Raw was still all about Triple H. At least Triple H would let himself be stupid from every once in a while, make himself look like an idiot because still he is a heel. So then we had our first match of the night, Edge versus Ric Flair. So Edge starts off with a few clotheslines and some body slams. He eventually body slams him on the floor, and Ric Flair does that. Whenever Ric Flair takes a big bump on the floor, he always does that, spot. You know the one I'm talking about, where he just starts moaning and everything. Like, Ric Flair is just, it's classic Ric Flair. So Orton's at ringside, and he grabs Edge's foot, and Flair pokes Edge in the eye to get the heat. Flair hits a great knee drop. That's another thing I wanted to add. 9 times out of 10, when you see knee drops, Triple H did this a lot too. When Triple H would drop a knee, he would flat out miss. Which again, I'm not saying that everyone should drop their knee, their full body weight, onto someone's face. Totally not calling that. But Flair, he either like barely graced Edge's face, or he made it seem like he absolutely drilled his knee into him without even hurting Edge. It was great. Like it looked really, really good. But then again, Ric Flair is one of the greatest of all time. So Orton hotshots Edge and Flair rolls him up for a near fall. Orton gets up on the apron and then Shelton Benjamin comes in and pulls him off the apron for a distraction, and then Edge spears Flair for the win. This match was alright. It was a star and a half. It was kind of there. A lot of the matches on this Raw were kind of just eh. But yeah, this was one of them. So then they cut to the backstage parking lot where Batista and Triple H were sitting in the parking lot waiting for Shawn Michaels. And then we had Vince McMahon with a quote-unquote special announcement. Basically, Vince McMahon is sitting there with all these women next to him, and he basically gives the lowdown for the first ever $250,000 Raw Diva Search. Essentially, this was a quote-unquote reality-based competition. I don't know how real those polls were. Like, does anyone know? I mean, I'm assuming they weren't real because nothing in wrestling really is real. You know what I mean? I can't imagine they just put out 12 girls and said, all right, we're going to let the fans decide who they like the most. And maybe they did, but I highly doubt it just because I feel like, and then again, when I think about it, a lot of the women did end up getting contracts. I know Maria was in this. Christy Hemme was the winner. Michelle McCool was in this. I don't know if I think she eventually got her contract, but whatever. But the point is, when they were showing Vince with all these women behind him, definitely none of these women were in the competition because none of them looked to be in shape. It seemed like they just went through the streets of Rockford, Illinois and just said, hey, you want to be on TV? Here, come with me. And like, everything was so cliche. Like when Vince showed the money to all of them, everyone was like, "Ugh!" Like everyone was just doing so like it was so stupid. All these women were completely emotionless. They looked completely plastic. They had no personality. And what was funny about this, and I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. There was during the women's champion. There was a women's title match, or I don't even know if it was for the women's title. It was Victoria versus Molly Holly. That was later down the show. We'll get to it. But King made a comment during that match because they mentioned the Raw Diva search during that match. And King mentioned that this Diva search, he said, we're not looking for a woman's wrestler. Because he said, we have the best women's wrestler in the world. Why do we need more? And I'm like, God forbid you need more women's wrestlers on a wrestling show. But King made it clear, and I'm assuming he was told to say this. He made it clear that this Diva search was to find the next, like a Sable or Sunny type of character. That, not a wrestler, but someone to grab someone's attention, a valet, if you will. And I mean, Christy Hemme, she did end up wrestling. I mean, she had that WrestleMania match with Trish. Granted, I don't think that was the original plan. I think it was Trish and Lita, but still. And you did have, like Maria Kanellis, she wrestled, even though I think Maria's strength is like a valet and like a personality. Michelle McCool was a multi-time champion, like she was a wrestler. So obviously they did breed a few wrestlers, but this was clear that it was like a bikini girl competition. It was definitely more based on looks. Now granted, I know wrestling's always based on looks, but still, like it seemed like wrestling was just a non-priority in this situation. And I think in the coming weeks when we see like the different challenges and the different things they'll do, it's like none of it really has to do with wrestling. So I guess it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way because it's just like, like, I just, it was constant eye roll after eye roll just watching this. Just like, this is so classic, like Vince McMahon, WWE, women's wrestling, you know what I mean? Just like a complete joke. Like, it's just, you have all these women that you could find anywhere in the world that are completely emotionless. They're just there, they're smiling, they're acting completely fake. This was just horrible. And I'm really dreading the next couple weeks watching this stupid Diva search. So then we had Todd Grisham backstage. Grisham says, he's by Lita's dressing room, and he says Kane has been harassing Lita. Understatement of the year. He practically, I think he raped her. So yeah, I would say that is under harassment. They show a replay of Kane attempting to kill Matt Hardy. So Matt Hardy comes in, he knocks on the door, he interrupts the interview, just knocks on the door. Lita comes out, she's right behind him. So Matt Hardy's like, oh my God, where have you been? And Lita's like, hey, look, I just want to talk to you. Listen, Matt Hardy, I love you. I love you so much. Like, you mean everything in the world to me, and I want to show you how much I love you. So they're like, oh, are we going out tonight? And Lita's like, hell yeah, we're going out tonight. So Matt's like, go get your bags, and I'll wait out here for you. Which begs the question. If Kane has been stalking this woman, he's raped her, he's done all this shit to her. Matt Hardy almost died at the hands of Kane last week. He was stepping on his throat. He was choking the life out of him. If I were Matt Hardy, I would say, you are not going anywhere by yourself. I am staying with you every second because this guy is crazy, and I'm going to sacrifice myself if he comes anywhere near you. And lo and behold, Lita walks into her dressing room. There's a camera already set up in her dressing room. It's like a camera cut. It's not like the cameraman followed her in. There was a camera cut to her dressing room. And Lita's like brushing her hair. She's gathering her things. And all of a sudden in the mirror, Kane is in the background. It's like, I fucking knew it. I fucking knew it. Matt Hardy is the worst fucking boyfriend of all time because lo and behold, Kane, he was in the dressing room. So, dumbass, maybe you should have gone with your girlfriend who's clearly been stalked by this psycho. So Kane just whispers, he keeps just saying, it's all over, it's all over. So then eventually Lita leaves. She meets up with Matt Hardy and she's like, okay, I'm ready to go. And then she acts like nothing's wrong. Then we had, by far, the highlight of the night. I'm not joking. This might be the highlight of Raw in 2004, and I totally forgot about this. I vividly remember the parking lot brawl with Shawn Michaels and Triple H and all. They had like 3 different brawl spots throughout the show. I vividly remember all that, but I do not remember this. So Triple H and Batista are chilling out in the back parking lot. And all of a sudden Triple H is like, hey, that's him, that's his car. So Triple H and Batista bomb rush to where Shawn Michaels' car is. They open the door, pull Shawn Michaels out, and they just start beating the shit out of him, right? And then eventually they stop. They both look at each other, and the camera comes by, and you get a clear shot of Steven Richards' face. It's Steven Richards. So Shawn Michaels was mistaken for Steven Richards. Triple H stops. He tells Batista to stop beating him up. They both stare at him for a bit. Steven Richards is still selling the brutal attack. Triple H says, listen, you go check on Orton Orton and Flair, I'll deal with him. So Batista runs away. It's just Triple H and Steven Richards. Triple H is just staring down at this man who he thought was his arch nemesis, and in pure anger and frustration, he just starts beating him up again. I laughed so hard. This was my favorite segment of Raw in the history of the world. Nothing will ever top this. So then we had a tag team match, La Resistance versus Hurricane and Rosey. So Hurricane and Conway start. It's the typical tag match. They get the heat on Hurricane. He gets an enziguri to set up a hot tag. He gets the hot tag to Rosey. He makes the comeback, hits some double clotheslines and everything. He eventually tags Hurricane back in. Hurricane goes for a Shining Wizard, but La Resistance double teams him because the ref's trying to get Rosey out of the ring. It's the classic, like, hey, they're double teaming him, and the ref's is too stupid to realize this shit's going on behind his back. So they're able to double team him and get the pinfall for a star and a quarter. This was an okay match. Nothing really to write home about. So then we get a cut back to the back parking lot. Triple H is walking around. He's just pacing, waiting for Shawn Michaels to show up. And then out of the blue, off camera, Shawn Michaels just runs on, tackles Triple H. They're rolling on top of a car. A bunch of refs come in and they separate him. So they were showing a replay, and this was the second best part of the night. JR says Hunter has become the hunted. I died. I laughed so fucking hard. You don't even know. It's just because it was so stupid. And you know JR just thought of that line just the second before they came back on the air. But they show a replay of the fight and everything, and then we come back to the ring, and Chris Jericho's in the ring for a highlight reel with special guest Randy Orton. So before Randy Orton gets brought out, Jericho talks about his victory over Christian and how Christian is now injured because of him, and CLB now stands for crushed lower back. That was a great line. So Jericho puts over Randy Orton, and then he introduces him. He calls him Randall, which gets a very hilarious reaction from Randy Orton. Jericho goes over his rivalry with Shelton Benjamin, and then basically just asks, why are you so afraid of Shelton Benjamin? So the best moment of this is Orton goes on a tirade, and then Jericho chimes in with a smart comment, and then Orton tells Jericho, he's like, don't you cut me off. And then Jericho says, oh no, this is my show, that's what I do, ass clown. Fantastic line. There's literally been 3 great lines so far in this show. Orton says he would not mind putting Jericho on the list of legends that he has killed, which is kind of ironic considering Chris Jericho's 2016 run. So Orton attacks him, and then Jericho fights back. Batista comes in, and it's a 2-on-1 assault, and then Benjamin makes the save, and then Eric Bischoff comes out and books a tag team match. So we had Chris Jericho and Shelton Benjamin versus Randy Orton and Batista. Jericho and Orton start. Jericho tags in Benjamin, and Orton tags in Batista. Orton and Batista get the heat on Benjamin, and then Benjamin hits a neck breaker, and then Jericho gets a warm tag. I say warm tag just because the crowd really didn't react. It was kind of weird. The crowd didn't react when Jericho got the tag, but when Jericho ran across the ring and clotheslined Orton and knocked Batista off the apron, the crowd became unglued. It was really weird. It was like a delayed reaction. They didn't expect a hot tag, even though they saw the tag right in front of their eyes. So Jericho hits a springboard drop kick on Batista, then he hits a bulldog on Orton, he goes for the lion salt, and he misses, but then he throws Orton out of the ring, and then he hits a springboard crossbody on both him and Batista. So they come back from the break, and Jericho is on the ground, they're getting the heat on Jericho, and apparently what happened during the break was Trish came out to distract Jericho. Trish joins the commentary team, which was very funny because obviously King was going nuts, but Trish didn't really sit down, and she didn't really talk to them all that much. She just kind of stood in between JR and King and had their arms. She had her arms on their chairs, and she was just standing there. She really wasn't even saying anything. King was trying to talk to her, and Trish was just yeah, sure. And King's what are you doing out here? And Trish Stratus says, you'll see. And King's oh, I'd love to see. So Batista and Orton work over Jericho's arm. Jericho makes the hot tag, and Benjamin goes off on Batista. Benjamin hits a near fall, and then Batista gets thrown out by Jericho. Orton goes for the RKO on Jericho, but Jericho throws him into Shelton Benjamin, who hits a T-bone suplex for the 3 count. I gave this 2 3/4. It was pretty good. The heat segment on Jericho was kind of boring. But other than that, it was very good. It was very, very good beginning, very good end. So afterwards, Shelton Benjamin and Chris Jericho are celebrating. They walk up the ramp together. Shelton Benjamin goes backstage, but Jericho stops what he's doing and starts talking to Trish. And then all of a sudden, Tyson Tomko comes out from the back. He attacks Jericho from behind and then power bombs him right through the announce table. So then afterwards, King is marking out because Tyson Tomko just destroyed Jericho, and he's like, oh, what an impression he made. And then all of a sudden, Kane's pyro goes off. It scares JR and King, which I have to say, that must suck. You know, they've moved Raw back to, in like modern day Raw, they've moved the announce table back to near the stage. And I have to think that sucks because you're right next to that pyro every single day. Now, granted, when you're in that arena, the pyro is going to be loud regardless. And I will say, it is kind of funny. I'm going to go off on a little tirade here about pyro. Whenever you go to a WWE event, I've been to several. I've been to a lot of wrestling events. You can always tell who is the first timer just because the pyro, it's really a pyro at a wrestling event is actually very, very interesting because on TV it doesn't really seem all that loud. And then when you go see like fireworks, you know, like on the 4th of July, you know, you hear them, but it's not like the loudest thing in the world. But then when you go to a WWE event, because it's in an enclosed space and because you're in a small arena and there's nowhere for that sound to travel, it's like a fucking like gunshot on steroids. It's like a cannon. And I just remember like when I was a kid, like the pyro would freak me out. Like the first Raw I went to was September of 2003. And I remember just the opening Raw pyro just blew my head off. Like it was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. Now granted, I've been to so many and I've sat like ringside, or I shouldn't say ringside. I've sat in like that the row closest to the stage. Like I've gotten that close before. I've sat there several times actually, and I'm right next to the pyro. Like I literally see the fireworks spring up. Like I'm that close, and I don't hear it anymore just because I'm so used to it, and I know what to expect. It's like nothing's loud anymore. But when I was a kid, and I shouldn't even just bring this to just myself. When you're a kid, and you go to those events for the first time, it is traumatizing because that shit is so loud. And Kane is the worst offender because Kane, you never know when it's coming. Like at least with like some pyro, like it's music driven or like it's part of the entrance. Like you think of like maybe like AJ Styles, like when his pyro's coming. But someone like Jericho or Neville, Jericho to an extent, because sometimes you knew when his pyro was coming, but like in his more recent runs, he just has pyro at the very beginning and then his music kicks in. So like it's like guys like Jericho, Neville, Kane. I know there's probably a few more, but like where pyro starts off, kind of the Dudleys kind of had that too, but they kind of had they had those screamer pyros, so like you kind of knew it was coming. But still, I just thought about it when I saw JR and King act scared when Kane's pyro came out. Just literally, I bet there was a kid there who was at his first wrestling event and he shit his pants. Whatever. Let's get back on track. So Kane has a very simple promo here. It lasted maybe a minute and a half, which is, again, all you need for a promo. Kane says he envies Chris Benoit for his title and his life of normals, which he was complimenting Chris Benoit's life here and knowing what was going to happen in 3 years. A very unsettling promo. So Kane says he lives in nightmares and darkness. He says he gets what he wants, and he wants the title, and then he does his little pyro thing, which again, I'm assuming scared the shit out of some little girls and boys at that event. So then we had another backstage segment, Shawn Michaels and Eric Bischoff. Shawn Michaels asks if he has his match. He put a very large emphasis on the word his. Apparently, Shawn Michaels asked for a specific match type here. Bischoff says yes, and then Triple H jumps Shawn Michaels from behind. It was actually hilarious because, obviously, since Shawn Michaels was talking to Bischoff, Bischoff got in the mix. So Triple H tackles Shawn Michaels, and thus Shawn Michaels tackles Eric Bischoff, and they run right into a big padded chair. So, I mean, it's not like Bischoff really got hurt here, but it was hilarious to see him get caught up in the mix. So then some refs and some agents come in and they separate the two, and Eric Bischoff's all pissed off. So then we had Molly Holly versus Victoria. Victoria debuted her horrendous new theme song. I was so angry when I heard this. This song is one of the most annoying songs in the entire world. You all know which Victoria theme I'm talking about, which is a shame because Victoria had one of the best themes of all time. That song by Tattoo, like all the things she said, she had the lyrical version and then she switched to an instrumental version. I don't know if that was a copyright thing or if they just didn't like the lyrics anymore. I know there was some controversy behind that song. Apparently some like homophobic countries, because the song deals with like girl like a girl being in love with her best friend, and they're like, oh, lesbians, like some, like really conservative homophobic countries ban the song. So maybe they took out the lyrics just so they didn't offend anyone, even though like really there's something to get offended about. It's just a song. So I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. I actually like the song. It's very catchy. But yeah, it was a very controversial song when it came out, but I thought it fit so well with Victoria, and I thought even the instrumental version was a great theme. And yeah, sure, she had the theme when she was doing her little crazy, heel gimmick, but I think even as a face, the theme could have worked out. But yeah, she switched to this whole new I Ain't the Lady to Mess With theme song. When she turned heel and had a slower version of that theme, it was okay. Like I could listen to it, but this like fast-paced one, it's just horrendous. So Molly comes out with her new wig and chin strap, always hilarious to see. So Victoria starts off strong, and then Gail Kim, who came out with Molly Holly, trips her up on the apron. So Molly puts in the longest chin lock of all time. Victoria makes a comeback after some roll-ups. Molly tries to get her off, and then Victoria hits the Widow's Peak for the win. Half a star. This is a nothing match. So then Gail Kim comes in and tries to attack Victoria, but then she gets Widow Peaked herself. Widow's Peaked. Is that even the correct? Would that even be grammatically correct? Victoria hit the Widow's Peak on Gail Kim. There you go. So then we had a backstage segment, Bischoff and Nitro. Bischoff says HBK and Triple H have no authority, and Bischoff tells Johnny Nitro to assemble everyone to get Triple H and Shawn Michaels under control. What I love about this is Bischoff claiming that Triple H and Shawn Michaels have no right to do anything on Raw without his permission. Therefore, he's going to get Johnny fucking Nitro to put them in their place. And as we all know, Johnny Nitro is the biggest dork on the roster. Bischoff is with the entire Raw locker room, and he says everyone needs to get the show under control. And Bischoff says if they don't get the show under control, they will fire him. What I hated about this segment was Chris Benoit was front and center, and Bischoff is just talking to the whole roster like they're a bunch of dorks. Now, granted, he does point out Chris Benoit, and he says, as champion, you're the leader of the pack. So at least they kind of put over Chris Benoit a little bit, but I still would prefer them to, like, not make Chris Benoit seem like such a second-rate person compared to the real stars, Shawn Michaels and Triple H. So then we go to a backstage segment with Todd Grisham. He's starting to interview Eugene. He tries to interview him, but Eugene is climbing on like the little like raw steel like grate thing they had in the back of the interview set. It was kind of funny. So Todd Grisham brings up The Rock, and Eugene does his Rock impression, and then Johnny Nitro shows up and says since Regal isn't reinstated, he cannot be in his tag team match with Eugene against Coach and Garrison Cade. So it's going to be a 2-on-1 handicap match. So Eugene comes out, all alone, and Garrison, Cade, and Coach are laughing at him. And then Lillian Garcia says, and his tag team partner. And then all of a sudden, Chris Benoit's music hits. So Eugene runs around with Benoit's titles. It was funny. So Coach knocks him down while Eugene's running around with the titles. And then Benoit just comes in and I mentioned it last week, but Benoit just came in and beat the shit out of these guys. He just came in, no nonsense, and just started whacking these dudes. It was amazing. So Eugene comes in. It's Eugene and Coach. So Eugene tags in Benoit, who just destroys Garrison Cade. He hits him with the chops and the kicks and the suplexes, and it's just not looking pretty for Garrison Cade. So Garrison Cade cuts off Benoit for a split instant. For like a split moment, they get the advantage on Chris Benoit, and then Coach tags in, and he's all smiles, and then Benoit just shakes it off, and then he just goes to town on Coach. It was awesome. So eventually Benoit hits the headbutt, and then he tells Eugene to go up and hit the headbutt himself. And because Nick Dinsmore was so great, what happens is Eugene goes all the way to the top rope, and then he acts like he can't keep his balance. So Chris Benoit has to like hold him up, and then Eugene hits the diving headbutt, knocks himself loopy. He can't even make the cover, so Chris Benoit has to drag himself onto Coach, and then Eugene gets the 1, 2, 3. I'm going to give this match 2 stars just because even though it was a nothing match, like nothing in this match in ring-wise was special, and there was really nothing to write home about, I enjoyed Eugene's comedic moments and Benoit just beating the shit out of Garrison, Cade, and Coach. So we have a backstage segment with Triple H and Evolution. Shawn Michaels just comes in with a bunch of geeks and he just attacks Triple H and they're trying to separate him. So then we have our main event brawl, Triple H and Shawn Michaels. So Triple H comes out and he calls out HBK, and then no time wasted, Shawn Michaels, his music hits and he comes running out, and they start trading blows, they go back and forth. So Flair tries to invade and then he gets super kicked. Orton and Batista come in and Shawn Michaels fights them off. Edge and Benoit come out and make it, even. They take out Orton and Batista. So some nerds try to come in and separate them. And then what was great is Shawn Michaels and Triple H are fighting, right? And then all of a sudden, like a bunch of, mid-carders and low mid-carder guys, they all start running down. They all start running the ring because they want to cash in on this bounty for Eric Bischoff. They want to be in good graces with the boss. So Shawn Michaels and Triple H, they stop fighting each other and they just start picking each guy off. And it's not like, they're doing these massive moves. They're just punching each guy and then every guy's just dying right in front of them. So it's like they had to pause their fight for a moment because okay, we need to pause because these guys are trying to fuck up our fight. So we're going to pause here. We're not going to fight each other. And then they went to opposite sides of the ring and just started beating up everyone else. So Eric Bischoff comes out. He asks for reinforcements. Eventually, everyone on the Raw roster is holding these guys back. And then Eric Bischoff says, I have an announcement to make. And he starts talking. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of his speech, Triple H breaks free and attacks Shawn Michaels, and then eventually everyone pulls him apart again, and Bischoff is so beyond pissed that he has lost complete control, and he says, at Bad Blood, it's going to be Shawn Michaels and Triple H, Hell in a Cell. Shawn Michaels is all happy because this is the match he wanted. Triple H, he seems a little surprised, but at the end of the day, he wants this guy. He wants him in a cage. He wants him in Hell in a Cell, so he's fine with it. And then to end the show, Shawn Michaels breaks free from the pact, and he just goes in and starts beating the hell out of Triple H, which was a great ending segment. I mean, I'm sure, main event promos aren't always the greatest thing in the world, but this was a great brawl. It was a great segment. I really enjoyed it. And overall, it was a good end to this Raw. So far, we're 3 for 3. Is this Raw, even though it wasn't the greatest thing in the world, I could easily sit through it. And there was enough good stuff that it wasn't, a horrible hour and a half that I had to watch this thing. So overall, a good Raw. Not as good as the last 2 weeks, but still a solid show. Much better than 2003. My name is Jericholic8704, and I will see all of you guys later.